It's a strange thing to actually describe it as a missionary journeys because, in essence, from Acts chapter 2, the church has been on a constant mission work. There have been people, souls reached through the gospel of Christ from all sorts of different areas and backgrounds. And this is mainly described as the missionary journey because we're moving in from the life now of Peter and those earlier in the book of Acts into the life of the Apostle Paul. And so it's really describing the first missionary journey of the Apostle Paul and Barnabas and others as they go through. So there's going to be 3 journeys altogether, plus a couple of other odds and ends in between. And as we go through the book, hopefully we'll be able to fill in some gaps about what's happening here. So Acts chapter 13. The overview of the missionary journey, starting off in Antioch, to Cilicia, to Salamis and Paphos, and all up into different Antioch Pisidia, and then down through to Derbe, and then all the way back to Antioch again. So we've done that in about 3 seconds. We're going to take probably a couple of weeks to get there, alright? Bear with me in that. But that's basically what we're talking about. That's the area we're talking about. It's interesting to say modern day Turkey, because sometimes we lose ourselves when we think back in time. We hear about a lot of the old names that places used to have, and we think, well, where was that? What was going on in that area? And it's interesting, if you've just been to Iraq, you know a little bit more about some of that eastern areas than maybe we're familiar with. But it's got a lot of history back here. Sometimes you could say some of these places where we were still digging potatoes many years ago, they were the civilizations of their day, and all around these areas were great intellects and great battles fought. A lot of the history of the world before Europe really took on its role as it has today is found back here. And it's good to be able to, if you ever get a chance to go on holiday to some of these places, rather than being posted as a job, you know, get a chance to go on holiday, then you get a chance to look around some of the ruins and they come to life. And the steps of, there was a good book many years ago written in the steps of the Apostle Paul. And the writer, as he went through there, his name just escapes me, Frank will probably know it. Morton, okay. Excellent writer, and the bushes come alive. And there's also the other one, The Land in the Book by Thompson, he's a cracking writer as well. And I always remember reading, that's thick, I don't know how many pages there are, 1,500 or something. I always remember his description of Moses when he stood up on the mount and looked over into the land of Canaan, the promised land, which Moses wasn't going to get. And from the steps of the explorer, or the traveller as he was, as he stood more or less where he thought Moses might have stood and looked over, he could just see this little green oasis, like a pearl, like a jewel glowing against the backdrop of the barrenness around it, and that was Jericho, the city of Jericho. So some of these writers not only have a tremendous feel for the area and the history of an area, but they can bring it to life, and if you get a chance to read some of these books, it's good stuff. Okay? So this is the area we're going to deal with, and it's a real pivotal point in the whole book of Acts here. We're going to change pace a little bit. Some might describe that. This runs from, the first missionary journey runs from Acts chapter 13, 1 through to Acts chapter 14, verse 28. And in here we have the account of Paul's first missionary journey. It means, in essence, that we've returned to this place called Antioch. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Antioch in a few minutes. Last time we were together, we talked about the church in Jerusalem. We'll learn about Peter's amazing deliverance from King Herod. I think King Herod Agrippa the first. And that poor man, after some of the things he did and accepting worship on behalf of God, if you like, he was almost proclaiming himself to be God in that situation. He was consumed with worms, the Bible says. So there's his prize for thinking he's better than God. So when chapter 12 closed, we saw Barnabas and Saul taking with them John Mark and walking their way back to Jerusalem, to this place Antioch in Syria, after delivering help which had been provided for the famine-hit brethren in Judea. This is an Antioch, a chalice of Antioch. All right. Somebody dug up from somewhere. So the Antioch church becomes the first base of operation for the missionary outreach to the Roman world. Jesus chose Paul to be the main force in organising missions to the Gentiles. We're going to come back to that in a little while. And the Holy Spirit sends out Barnabas and Saul on this first journey. Now, we've got a background. This is going to be no easy task. This is going to be quite a challenging journey for them. We sometimes take it for granted the way we can travel around the world. When did you leave Iraq, Len? Sunday. And here you are Tuesday night with us. Now, if you'd been doing that by donkey, it would take a little bit longer, wouldn't it?
You could swim.
All right, you could swim, yeah. Donkey would need to be able to swim. Yes. Yeah, all right. Thanks for that, right? So, it's quite a dangerous journey, and we're going to read more about it as chapters go on. But before we get to that point, I'd like to share a little bit about the Antioch church. In the text, it's really, I think I can come down here to the text. I've got a little bit of text here, just after this. Should be. Yeah. In the church at Antioch, there were prophets and teachers, Barnabas, Simon called Niger, Lucius, and all the rest. Okay. Now, that's all it says. In the church at Antioch, there were. But we know a little bit more about the church in Antioch from what's gone before, as well as we know a little bit about the history of Antioch from the secular writers of that time. And it's that really, in that first 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth word, Antioch, that we're going to spend a little bit more time with tonight. Okay? So, in Acts chapter 11, verse 27, the prophet named Agabus had been inspired to give a warning about a coming famine, a great famine he called it. And he said it would affect the world literally. And the implication of that would have been all the inhabited earth as far as he was concerned. He used a word called oikomene, which is the same word used in Luke chapter 2 verse 1, and that describes the decree issued by Caesar Augustus when he commanded a census of the population of the Roman Empire. As far as the Romans were concerned at that time, the inhabited earth was basically everything involved in the Roman Empire. That was what they were concerned with, that was what they were involved with. And when you talked about the inhabited earth, that was really all there was. A bit like probably us about 100 odd years ago, talking about the British Empire. As far as we were concerned, only the things we owned in the world was really important. All the rest was just sideshow. And so for the Romans and the Roman Empire, who saw themselves as the kingpins of the world of their day, every country within the boundaries was really in the world. And they couldn't really imagine living a life outside of that Roman culture, apart from probably the Scots would disagree with that, wouldn't they, Roger? And you guys have been up over the Hadrian's Wall, so you might see, different people up there. That's why, no, we'll go into that. All right. So this famine, according to the prophet, would affect the whole Roman world, and Luke tells us came in the days of Emperor Claudius. Now, since he came to the throne in AD 41, the brethren there had time to prepare for it. It's probably the same famine as is indicated or mentioned in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. When the disciples in Antioch heard that the brethren in Judea were having a particularly hard time, they decided to take action. And that's an interesting word that's involved in that, okay? There's several things we probably need to notice about this. The way the Christians of that first century reacted to need. It's an important lesson for us today. We see it a number of times. In Acts chapter 2 we saw it, when the thousands or even the millions came to Jerusalem. The thousands became Christians and wanted to stay there to listen to the message instead of going back home. The other Christians looked after them. They looked after them for quite a while there. And then again the same thing in Acts chapter 6, where we saw the benevolence of the church in action, meeting the needs of the people of their day. 1 John chapter 3 verse 17, it has the Holy Spirit laying down a similar sort of principle. He says that if a man has enough to live on and sees his brother in need and does nothing about it, he cannot really know much about possessing the love of God. So Christianity in the first century, and Christianity in every age, ought to be able to meet the needs, or strive to meet the needs of the people, especially the fellow brethren, wherever they are in the world. When we hear of something, a disaster, or something like that in a special way, we need to be involved in that. The church in Corby, when it first began here, had a good reputation in the town. If there was a fire, the church would be one of the first groups of people there with clothes and offers of help and stuff like that. And as the church grew and there were many younger, active members, so we were able to help a lot of people in the time of need. And that would have made a big impact on the community. So the Antioch Christians responded quickly. They didn't talk about coming to having a meeting to discuss the situation and hold an inquiry and send off delegates to see how long things would take. They didn't appoint a committee. They didn't put forward a proposition and move and second it and put it to the vote. They didn't take months to decide what to do, which sometimes we often do. By the time we get something going, the emergency's been met by somebody else and the need is over. So they didn't take months or even weeks to think about it. They didn't put it up for consultation in the next business meeting. These are new Christians and they're excited about the work. They hear a need, they want to respond to that need, and so they go out and do that. The church had only existed for a little more than a year, but they were not what they might call mature or experienced, but they were young in the faith, but they were enthusiastic about the faith they held. And most importantly, for Antioch, the church were Gentile Christians. Many of the church were made up of Gentile Christians, which is a real dramatic difference from the church earlier on, who were made up of Jewish Christians. And because there was always this hostility almost, or antipathy between the two different nationalities, if you will, or types of group of people, that always used to cause problems. But here were Gentiles who didn't stop and think, well, I'm not helping him, he's Scottish. Well, I'm not helping him, he's French. You know, that would be a terrible thing for me. And anyway, you know, you think about the national or the theological barriers in times past. They were prepared to meet the needs of their fellow brethren, irrespective of where they came from or the colour of their skin. And so there was, against the background of being no love lost between Syria and Judea, you have these early Christians willing to step into the breach and do something. Another thing involved in that, Agabus not only talked about the famine for the area it was hit first, he implied that the famine would continue throughout that area, which ultimately would mean it would come to Antioch. Now you could imagine some of the brethren in Antioch saying, goodness, if there's definitely famine coming, we need to keep the stuff for ourselves, we need to stockpile for ourselves. No point in us helping them because we're going to need help soon. They didn't think that way. They just got in there and did something for those people. And that made a huge difference in attitude to the church in Jerusalem. Gentiles coming to the aid of Jewish Christians. The barriers that had stood for centuries were being broken down by this young, vibrant church in Antioch. They acted, they took the plunge, they did something that perhaps we wouldn't you know, consider. They met a need, even knowing that they themselves might need some help later on. So Frank used to tell a story about a sister here in Corby. The building always needs repairs. The building needed something doing to it, and there'd been a proclamation. You know, we need help. Anybody who could take out a loan or you know would give you the money back eventually. But can you help in this situation? And there was a little old lady in the congregation, a sister who turned around and says, I would like to give £50. And Frank said to her, you mean lend £50? She said, no, I want to give £50. And that's a long time ago, that's a lot of money. But she didn't want the church to pay her back, she wanted to give it. And this lady, I think, would have fitted out very nicely in the Church of Antioch, because that was the atmosphere that they lived in and breathed in. That was the impact that they were able to have on that area. But Antioch's got a bigger picture than just the Christians there. You may remember there were three major cities in the Roman world. The first you could come to expect would be Rome itself. The second would be Alexandria in Egypt, which you remember was a part of the Roman Empire. And thirdly, Antioch in Syria, or Syrian Antioch. It's sometimes called this to distinguish it from the other cities of the same name. Chrysostom, who was born in 347 AD, he claimed it had a population of 800,000, and some would go as far as to say 1 million people. One of the cities visited on the first mission journey was Antioch in Pisidia, or Pisidian Antioch. All of these Antiochs, and there was about 16 of them, were established by the same man, a man called Seleucus Nicator. It was in honor of his father, a man called Antiochus. He began this rather intensive building program about 301 BC. So a lot of these cities sprung up with the same name. So it gave a bit confusing with you imagine the horsemen with these posts. Take this to Antioch. Which one? Which one? Make sure you got it the right one to get to the right place. It was supposed to be a beautiful city. It had a main street running through the centre of the city, 4 miles long. God, would be 7 miles across, 5 miles across. I don't think you could put that street, that main one coming from the roundabout by the garage, all the way through to the St. John's on the way out. I doubt if that's 2 miles. Yeah. So this is a huge city, and the main street's 4 miles long. It had even had, of course, it even had street lighting. Street lighting 3 centuries before Christ was born. Probably electric. No, probably not. It had even fountains in some of its main street junctions. I remember when I went to Bali, I was really impressed because every roundabout has got these huge statues and sometimes fountains flowing out in the centre. Very spectacular. I haven't been around a lot, but that was quite impressive, especially in such a poor country. Anyway, the capital in New Testament times was the capital of Syria. In Peter.Paul's day, it was a beautiful, fashionable, wealthy place, a place known for scholars and for thinkers. Just the sort of place where Gentiles would love to come. It was a crossroads where nations met, and just a kind of place to be a centre for the proclamation of the gospel. That wheel that you often see in Paul's ministry, where in the hub, where he likes to go and establish a congregation, and that congregation, like a spokes of a wheel, sends out its missionaries all the way around and then impacts the rest of the community. So it was a vibrant place. But there's other things about Antioch that's really worth a look. I've missed a bit? No, I haven't. Okay. Right. Anyway, there was a preaching in Judea, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and now we're going. The gospel is going out into all the world. And Antioch was an ideal description of a worldly place, a place of the world. Philip took the gospel to Samaritans. Later, Peter spoke to a remarkable Roman soldier who had come to know about God. Now here in Antioch, the final step is taken over the dividing line between the Jewish world and the Gentile world. This is a huge step for the church in the first century, and it's going to have huge implications for the rest of the country around. Acts 11 verse 20 reveals that quite deliberately and without waiting for either invitation or instruction, certain men of Cyprus and Cyrene, men who were non-Jews, had come to Antioch. They had told the Greeks about the gospel. And in a sense, that's really remarkable. We hear about Saul, we hear about Peter, we hear about some of the other apostles and the great work they were doing. He were ordinary men in the congregation of their day who took the gospel message first to this huge city in Antioch. We don't even know who they were. We don't know their names. We don't know anything else about them. But they brought the message of the gospel. Think back to Acts chapter 8, where persecution came. And ordinary men and women in Christ gossiped the gospel wherever they went. And that's the kind of situation you have. Taking on a major city, wherever they found themselves, they didn't think to themselves, we can't do anything here. These people are too horrible. These people are too intellectual. We'll never make a mark here. They proclaimed Christ, and they had an impact on the area. Antioch was fashionable, as I said. It was wealthy, as I said, and it was beautiful, as I said. But it also, like many cities, had a dark side. It was, in the words of one writer, very wicked, extremely wicked. It was perhaps, some would even describe it as infamous, rather than famous, throughout the world, Roman world for immorality and a depraved lifestyle. Juvenal, the Roman poet and writer who was born in AD 60, had nothing good to say about the city and declared that the Syrian Orontes, the river in which Antioch was situated, had polluted his native Tiber, the river of Rome, with tainted stream of luxury and vice. That's a pretty harsh thing to say. He was writing in the flowery style of a poet about vice and all-consuming passion for leisure, for which Antioch was known. And this sprang from an immoral pagan worship which was carried on in the city. Antioch was known for the groves of Daphne. There was a temple in which the goddess Daphne was worshipped. About 5 miles outside the city, there was a grove of laurel leaves, and that's where the temple was situated. The story of the Greek legend of Daphne is a Greek mythology, and she was said to be a beautiful young woman with whom Apollo, one of the Greek gods, fell in love. She ran from him, and he chased her. And in order to save her from being caught, the gods heard her prayer and changed her into a laurel tree. And in the groves of the temple of Daphne at Antioch, that history was supposed to be reenacted every night, with priestesses playing the part of Daphne and the so-called worshippers playing the part of Apollo. There was a slight difference in the script. The priestesses didn't change into laurel bushes, nor did they try to escape. They were always caught, and because they were religious prostitutes, and the phrase "the morals of Daphne" was an expression known throughout the Roman world, which was used to describe this immoral behaviour. Such a wicked city, yet here is where the missionary journeys began, in Antioch. Probably a description very much like Corinth. Similar type of background, a great challenge to the gospel of Christ. Sometimes we can find ourselves dealing with people, we think, these people are just too bad. There's no way they're going to listen to what I'm going to say about Christ. There's no way I'm going to break through their lifestyle. And I know, I personally have made, I think, possibly some mistakes. Because I've spoken to somebody and I've found out a little bit about him, and I thought to myself, this guy, there's no way he's going to come to Christ. And so I stopped talking to them. Not stop talking, I'll casually talk to him, but I will no longer promote Christ as much as I did before I understood the background. That's me making decisions about, God can change anybody. We are there to sow the seed. We're not to determine, I won't sow here because I don't think the seed's going to be profitable. We need to sow the seed anyway. And hopefully we'll be able to touch people's lives. Because sometimes, if you touch somebody's life just at the right time, they may be fed up of their decadence. They may be fed up of the situation they find themselves in. They're perhaps at that point in life that they've got down so far that they're now ready to be lifted up. And how are we to tell? Okay? So we need just to be there for people and help them involved in whatever their lifestyle is. Okay, so never write anybody off. When you think of the Apostle Paul in his own, he wasn't decadent, but he certainly was an enemy of the church when he persecuted them, and God changed his life. So there's hope for all of us. But we look sometimes at our lives. We're grateful that God has stepped into our lives and challenged us and changed us. Okay, the next section, in that, I don't know whether you noticed it there. Let me go back. It says, in the church at Antioch there were prophets and teachers. Barnabas called Simon called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene. So a prophet and a teacher, the question is, what's the difference between a prophet and a teacher? In the first century, there can be elements of inspiration in both. Like the book of Ephesians gives that kind of feel to some of these things. A prophet is usually a man who spoke from God, and in the first century church, there would have been a man who had been inspired to speak from God, because they didn't have the New Testament as we know it. And therefore, for him to be able to prophesy, or it could have been like Agabus, who was able to prophesy when there was going to be a famine. But usually the prophet was used to bring a message from God, be God's spokesman. Whereas a teacher, they would still have that inspirational element in it, but not necessarily all the time. A teacher could be like somebody like me who just takes his notes and or reads the Bible and then passes that on. There is an element that could be, some people could say that in the description in Ephesians, both the prophet and the teacher had the inspirational element behind them because they didn't have the New Testament. So there's a little bit of a slight difference about that. You would think that a prophet who proclaims would be the same as a teacher who proclaims. But there's a subtle difference. and some of the books will tell you, go into more detail on what that subtle difference is. Let me get my... Okay. Okay, that's no good. I opened up the wrong chapter there, that's fine. Talk about yourself. Okay, so, and my mouse is here's some of the coins of Herod Antipas. I think Bernard's had a few of these. Some in your
Still got them, yes.
Yeah. And you still got your old nail from Roman nail?
Of course.
You've been a carpenter, you always carry one of them around, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're living in a really good age, in a sense, where we have still access to a lot of the historical stuff that comes out. So the first church in the Gentile world was truly multi-ethnic, I think there should be a gap in that, multi-ethnic and diverse. Simon was called Niger, black in Greek, probably a black man. Some people would like to think it's the same Simon who was involved with carrying the cross of Jesus, but I don't think that's the case. But Niger, it means black. The Ethiopian was probably, or some would say undoubtedly, a black man who converted to Judaism. Again, depends who you read on that type of thing. Would you have an inspiration on that, right? The Ethiopian?
Well, he's described as Simon, the father of
No.
two characters that are mentioned by Paul in Romans.
Yes. That should be, it's in my notes, but I've got the wrong chapter on. Okay. But Lucius was from Cyrene, a city in Libya in North Africa. So you've got Manaen, who could have been related to King Herod the Tetrarch or Herod Antipas, or perhaps just a childhood companion of his. There's a lot of stuff written about the link between this guy Manaen and just what is involved with these with this great important family of that age. And if I had the right notes, I'd probably share some of that with you. But matter of fact, I might have a little bit more on here. Okay. Yeah, not really. Okay. The last one we're more familiar with, and we move our nice back. Saul, or Paul. Saul was his Hebrew name, Paul is his adopted Roman name. There's a number of things about that. Of course, he was a Roman citizen from Cilicia, and in this instance he's mentioned as part of this missionary journey. It's interesting, there's lots of theories as to why Saul in his old life is now known almost exclusively amongst the Christians as Paul. Possibly just because now he's working in the Roman arena rather than in the Greek arena rather than in the Gentile arena rather than the Jewish arena. That could be something to do with that. And both names are very, very similar. And I won't go into any of that. Okay, but there is an interesting thing takes place here. We always, in the missionary journeys, think in terms of the Apostle Paul as being the most important person after Peter in the book of Acts. And then, especially as we go through the rest of the New Testament, Paul's highlighted in practically every book as an important element in the church. But here in this first couple of verses, he's introduced as Barnabas and Saul, as opposed to Paul and Barnabas. Okay, and there's a reason for that. Barnabas at this point had the initiative. Remember way back when Paul was converted, it was Barnabas that basically helped him out, recognized him, helped him out with the local congregations. Barnabas was the leader or the instigator in helping him work his way around the local churches and stuff. And of course that was it. Then he went off, and then he came back obviously from his period with Jesus and becomes involved in these missionary journeys. And the beginning of the missionary journey, Barnabas is mentioned first. Barnabas is obviously the leader. All of these men would be important men with special talents that the church would be recognizing to do this missionary task. But obviously they're all fairly leadership potential, leadership in quality. Barnabas would have been better known in the churches than the Apostle Paul, as we know him. And he was certainly more popular at this time than the Apostle Paul. and it was him who introduced Saul of Tarsus to the elders of the church in Jerusalem. He's the one who's been sent from Jerusalem to discover what was happening in Antioch in Assyria. And he was the one who decided that it was this Saul who could do such a good work, and went to Tarsus to find him. But now we're moving into areas where there are no churches, and where therefore the reputation of the man Barnabas in essence would have counted for nothing. So the natural talents and abilities of individuals would be the more recognisable thing. They're not working on reputation, they're working on what they're able to do and the challenges they're able to meet. So there's basically in chapter 13 a change of leadership occurring. In chapter 12 is Barnabas. In verse 9 of chapter 13 and verse 13 of chapter 13, we read of Paul and his company. Now before it's the Barnabas and the others and Saul's last. But by 13 it's Paul and his company. 2 verses later, in 14 verse 12, we read about the Apostle Paul, Barnabas and Paul. And later again the order changes several times. It's almost like some areas Barnabas is in the lead, and some areas it's Saul it's in the lead. And so these changes are taking place. It's not a leadership struggle, it's a shared work, but it's just the impact of their personalities, the impact of their abilities is making a difference, and different people are recognizing what they're able to do. I wonder what Barnabas thought about Saul sometimes taking the lead, or Saul sometimes getting the credit. It's difficult sometimes. And sometimes in a congregation, if there's two strong characters, maybe an older and a younger, or they can be the same age, there's usually a kind of vying in the congregational sense as to who's the most popular. And that's not really fair in a way, because probably both have different skills, and they should be recognized for those skills. And so competition isn't necessarily a bad thing. It only becomes a bad thing when they turn around, like in 1 Corinthians, where it comes and says, well, we're of Apollos and we're of Peter, and you get these factions coming out. And that's when it becomes a bad thing, and division occurs. But that wasn't the case with Barnabas and Paul. But Barnabas shows, I think, from the text, a little bit of his humility. He's not frightened of Saul being mentioned first. He's not frightened of taking the back seat. He's not frightened of allowing the abilities of this young man to be coming forward. More than that, he actually is encouraging, as we've seen in earlier chapters. He's been encouraging the Apostle Paul to make this kind of dedication and this move and to pick up these challenges. I don't know if we've got any indication as to how old Barnabas was. And perhaps that could come into it a little bit as well, because sometimes, especially with the kind of mountain areas and stuff that these guys are climbing over, sometimes, well, then some of the younger guys do the hard work and will do the administration back home or whatever. Anyway, Saul was his Hebrew name, and Paul was his Roman name. So as we go on with the thing, after they fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and then sent them off. Again, historically, fasting and prayer has always been a little bit of a problem subject for some people. You get some people say, well, we should be fasting in the church today. Some of us probably could be doing with fasting in the church today. But they would see it as, in some religious groups, fasting is a part of the year. I don't know where Ramadan's coming up soon, isn't it? No. Saturday? Okay. Started today, and I thought it was soon. So there's a whole month. But they don't starve themselves. They get around a little bit. But still, it's they can't go down for their egg and chips or their Chinese like they used to. They've got to show or demonstrate that they're at least trying within 7 hours
during
daytime to fast. Okay. I've always not quite understood that. But anyway, fasting is a big part of their religious experience. And in some of the other religious groups, fasting is quite an important aspect. And some religious groups would say, you've got to fast. They would actually impose it on the religious followers as a part of their worship. But we see it quite often in the New Testament, and in this element by itself, it's almost like a a dedication, a time of dedication where they forgo the pleasures of the world. Well, they shouldn't have the Christians, they shouldn't have any pleasures. No, they should have pleasures not of the world. They should forgo some of the physical things because they're concentrating on the spiritual. They want to elevate each other and say this is important. And the same thing with prayer, spending time. Doesn't say how long we spend in time in prayer, but probably we don't do enough prayer. It's one of those things that it's good to spend time. We have in times past had 24-hour prayer situations and different people coming and praying at different times all through the night and things for some specific thing. And that shows dedication. It shows importance that we are taking whatever we're looking at, thinking about seriously. And especially if you're ready an important missionary journey like this. This is really a milestone in the early church's work, and therefore to highlight the importance of it, they're setting this time aside. They're leaving their normal desires, if you like, on hold, and they're spending time together praying, concentrating on hopefully the success of the journey. It's going to be a day, it's not going to be easy. So they're also showing an identification with those who are going. Sometimes it's easy to send somebody off somewhere, considering they might get killed, and while we're at home watching TV. You know, so this praying and fasting with the elders and stuff was an important identification, saying, look, we are there for you. We're asking God's blessing on what you're going to do, and we'll be thinking about you in every aspect of what's ahead of you. And it's a serious thing, so therefore they demonstrated that by the prayer and the fasting. They talked about laying hands on them. Some people go to this passage and say, look, they're being given gifts to go on the job. The people that are mentioned don't need any gifts. They've already got gifts up their eyeballs. They're not getting a gift by being laid hands on here. But it is for the congregation being shown, these men are being set apart for this particular purpose, dedicated for this purpose, and we are showing as the responsible men of this congregation, we are behind them every inch of the way, and we want you to be behind them every inch of the way. Okay? That's always a good place to be, behind. You know, and let somebody else get the flag. But that's not intended here. Obviously, it's a good sense. We're behind them. We encourage them. We're there for them. Okay. Even when an army goes on a march, it depends a lot on the backup. I was amazed when I saw in Afghanistan where they had this bottling plant underground producing millions of bottles of water. I never thought, you get a couple of thousand troops out there and they're going to need water because they're out in the middle of nowhere and it's hot and the ordinary water could get contaminated. So they've got this huge millions of pounds worth of bottling plant just as a backup to give the men their ration of water for the day. It's not something you think about. And sometimes in our planning, we don't always think about that. We don't always think about the backup, the encouragement that people will need, the resources people will need in order to do the job. So just as important as the ones who are going out in this missionary journey are the ones who put the money in the plate in order to pay for all the stuff that they'll need on this missionary journey. Just as important as the ones who are praying for them on a daily basis on this missionary journey. So it's a congregational effort. It's not just the ones going off in front, but the congregation are doing their bit in sharing in this experience on this missionary journey. And it's just as important. Important when you're out in a cold night and maybe somebody's beating you up or somebody's throwing you into prison, to know that back home the congregation are praying for you, they're caring for you, and they're doing their best to try and get you out of there. So logistics are just important. So it's a team thing. It's not just the preacher. It needs those who are listening. It's not just those who are listening. It's the whole impact that you can have in an area. And it's the individual who takes along the cup of cold water to their person is just as important as the person who preaches the gospel sermon. Okay, so they sent them off, and I think we'll probably leave that there. That should be in white, but I've changed my other computer onto white. Like all things, there's more involved. It can be seen at first glance. Evangelism is a team effort. There are the goers, and just as importantly, there are the senders, the cash and the prayers. Okay? We'll hold it there. Any questions? And Frank will answer. Happy? That's almost verse 3.
Well, this is it.